Hi, I'm Victoria, and I'm here with Vital Life Keto. We are a division of Vital Life Hormone Replacement Clinic located in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm here to welcome all of you and help you begin your ketogenic journey. A little background on myself. I have been with the Colorado Laser Clinic and Vital Life now for about 26 years. I started in the medical profession in the 1980s. I actually ran several types of weight loss programs back then. I did everything from the liquid, OptiFast, MetaFast type programs, and then graduated slowly in the 90s into more of the carbohydrate or the calorie counting type programs. And then actually have also recently run an HCG injection program, just all sorts of different diet programs. And the one thing that kind of struck me and actually became an issue with all those programs is they were not sustainable. Right now, the biggest problem with the weight loss industry is keeping the weight off. We all know what we need to do to lose weight. That's easy. Keeping it off is difficult. Matter of fact, about 90% of patients on a regular calorie restricted type program will actually regain their weight back within 1 year. And a lot of those patients will add another 10% on the top. So it isn't so much about losing weight, it's about finding something that actually works long term and is a sustainable option. And that's when we began to really take a look at the ketogenic diet. The keto diet has probably been around, I would say, the last 20 years. Different than Atkins. There's a lot more protein in Atkins than there would be on a ketogenic diet. I mean, ketogenic diets usually have very moderate to low amounts of protein, a little bit higher in fat than you'd find in Atkins, and very low in carbohydrates. So it is different than an Atkins program. So let's take a look at the ketogenic kind of idea behind it. Where did this all come about? So this kind of came about over the last 20 years because things were not working as they were projected to work. Basically in 1970, researchers and scientists, especially those working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, wanted to come up with a way to reduce cardiovascular disease. And they looked at the foods we were eating and decided, oh, well, this cardiovascular issue must be coming from all the fats and proteins we're consuming, so we need to change the way people in the United States look at food, and we need to develop what we will call the food pyramid and give patients and doctors and the population direction on how to consume food. And so what they did is they decided that whole grains, pastas and rices were what we should be eating. So they shoved that down at the bottom of the pyramid and said most of our food intake should come from those sources. They took fruits and vegetables, kind of shoved them in the middle, and then they decided there again that proteins, especially from animal products, and fats, dairy, olive oil, those kinds of things were not good for us. And so they put those at the very tippy top of that food pyramid. Well, people started eating that way. Doctors started recommending to their patients that they eat that way in an effort to reduce cardiovascular disease. And an interesting thing occurred. Things actually got worse. They didn't get better. Diabetes and obesity rates began to just climb exponentially. And so around 2010, the Department of Agriculture re-looked at their food pyramid and decided maybe we made a mistake telling people to eat all these carbohydrates and grains and breads and rices, and maybe we should kind of put those more in the middle of the pyramid, and let's recommend people eat 5 fruits, 5 vegetables a day, which is a very erroneous number that was just kind of come up with. There is no scientific research anywhere that has ever proved that 5 vegetables, 5 fruits a day is going to make you healthy. It just sounded good at the time, so those got thrown at the bottom. your grains and breads and starchy carbohydrates got shoved in the middle, and then they left the oils and the fish and animal proteins at the top. Well, what happened? Nothing improved. Matter of fact, obesity rates actually climbed from 13% in 1960 all the way up to close to 40% and higher in some areas of the country in 2018. So like I said, I kind of relay this, and this to me is what I call the big con. You know, the big con, if we follow these recommendations, we're all going to get healthy. Well, guess what? It made our population more unhealthy, if anything. So one of the studies that was done by the National Health and Nutrition Department is they did a survey. They looked at the data on type 2 diabetes, and they discovered that actually over the last 30 years, it has quadrupled. So there's an epidemic. Insulin resistance is on the rise in most adults right now. There's kidney dialysis centers. It seems like every half mile when you drive, they're all over the place. And being a child of the 50s, especially I was born in 57, and running around in the 70s and 80s, I don't remember ever even hearing or seeing a kidney dialysis center. Let alone now, like I said, now they seem to be almost on every corner. So as a baby boomer, we really took the bull by the horns in the 80s and 90s and just bought into this whole con. And we ate our 5 fruits and our 5 vegetables. We ate our whole grains, and we cut out our fat, and we ate very little protein. We quit smoking, which was great. We started exercising, which is awesome. And then we started taking lots of supplements and all these new medications. And guess what? We got sicker. Now, as far as cancers and things goes, those are on the rise at this time. Like I said, the obesity rate is up to over 40%, which means 2 out of 5 adults are grossly obese in the United States. Insulin resistance is just commonplace now among adults, and cancer's on the rise. Something is wrong. Lewis Carroll's quote in Alice in Wonderland, one of his quotes was, "It would be so nice if something made sense for a change." But we've all fallen down the rabbit hole, and things don't make sense anymore. So to make sense of it, scientists and researchers decided we really need to go back to the beginning to look at how our ancestors ate, and to look at human beings and how we're built, and to compare ourselves with our common ancestors and our common animals and our cousins, the great apes. How do they eat compared to how do we eat? What makes them healthy and what makes us unhealthy? And so one of the things that happened is scientists and researchers actually decided to take a look inside our guts, because we are what we eat, right? So when you look at a human being's internal organs, you discover that we have extremely long small intestines. The small intestine does most of the work as far as absorbing nutrients from our food, about 90% of the work. And we have a very small, large intestine, or colon, that really is there to absorb water so that it gives us more of a bulky stool, but doesn't really absorb very much nutrients. Only maybe, I think, between our stomach and our large intestines, about 10%. So when you compare that to our closest cousins, which would be, chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas, you find that actually compared to all the great apes, we actually have the longest small intestine. Gorillas have a very small or very short small intestine, but a really large and long colon. So let's take a look at what are we eating? Why would that be? Well, if you look at a gorilla, they mainly sustain themselves on vegetable matter. They eat no meat. They don't really eat any fats. And so when you look at a gorilla, most people will notice that they have very distended bellies, and this is due to their really long colons. That's why their bellies protrude, because they've got so much in there as far as intestines go. Human beings, on the other hand, if you look at a human being with a big tummy, their tummies have nothing to do with their internal organs. It actually has to do with the amount of fat that's around those organs. So they have an incredible amount of fat around the inside, around the kidneys and the liver and the intestines. You'll see big accumulations of fat. And on the outside, you'll see fat as well. So human beings over the last few centuries are developing these beer bellies, and it's not due to what's inside, it's due to what we're eating. So if you were to look at our internal organs, human beings physically should have flat bellies. This big kind of beer belly type look, that is totally a function of the food that we're eating. So the conclusion was that human beings, because we do have these really long small intestines, we actually are made to eat meat, and we're made to eat oils and fats, and really very little carbohydrates. That's just not how we're built. So the common sense approach, if you look at this and look at it from a common sense perspective, what does that mean? That means we should be getting most of our food sources from meats and fish and eggs, fats from olives and avocados, and natural oil sources like olive oil, coconut oil, those kinds of things. We really shouldn't be intaking what I call synthetically produced oils like canola or vegetable oils, because they're actually made using a chemical process. Above ground vegetables, things that are grown above ground, cucumbers, tomatoes, spinach, greens, lettuce, that kind of thing. Very low glycemic fruits, mainly your berries. And then anything that is produced from a grain should be eliminated. No corn, no wheat, no potatoes, no rice, nothing like that, no starch vegetables. And I always tell my patients that if you can make paste with it, it is probably a carbohydrate that you want to avoid. So if you were to look at a ketogenic food pyramid and compare it to the agricultural department pyramids, you would find they're totally different. They don't even look nearly the same. A keto food pyramid actually has fats and proteins at the bottom, so that's your mainstay of what you would consume. Your fresh above ground vegetables, minus corn of course, in the middle, and just a few berries and more carbohydrate dense foods at the tippy top. So it looks totally different than the food pyramids we're all used to seeing today. So what this means is we need to change the way we look at food. We need to erase those preconceived notions that we were taught from the time we were itty bitty kids and start to eat like we're built. And there's lots of foods that people can eat. I mean, one of the biggest things questions I get asked is, well, what can I eat? How's this going to work when I go out to a restaurant or just even cooking for the family? It's very easy. I have been on this program for quite a while now. I have converted my family over to it, so I totally cook ketogenic. It amounts to being able to eat any protein from any source that you come across is perfectly fine. You can even eat tofu, and lots of oils. I love olive oil. I cook a lot with coconut oil. I use MCT oil. I put butter on my meat. Very easy. We eat a lot of salads. Dressings, as far as Caesar, blue cheese, and even ranch dressing, have very little carbohydrates in them, so they're very easy to use. I cook a lot with avocados, guacamole. I put it on my salads, use a lot there. We also eat a lot of fresh greens like spinach. Cauliflower is fantastic. Matter of fact, there's a ton of recipes you can use cauliflower now. Really, the only thing that we don't buy anymore are your breads and your rices and your potatoes, and honestly, my family doesn't even miss them. When I go out to eat, I can pretty much order any meat off the menu. And if there is a potato that usually comes with it, I'll ask them if I can get a double salad, or if I can get maybe some steamed broccoli or another steamed vegetable, obviously other than corn. And restaurants are extremely accommodating. So I have no problem going out to eat. There are occasions when I do feel like I want something like a zucchini bread. Those can easily be made with nut flours. There are several options out there, including almond flour, coconut flour, hazelnut flour, and we have come up with some wonderful recipes that can basically simulate zucchini bread or pumpkin bread or pancakes or waffles. I even make mini donuts using nut flours, and I'm lucky if I even get one or two myself, because usually my family has finished them off by the time I get around to where I would like one. As far as alcohol, I have a lot of patients that are worried that, wow, what about my glass of wine, or am I going to be able to have a gin and tonic? You know, I would like to go out and drink socially. Not a problem on a ketogenic diet. Red wines can be an issue because they're just very high in carbohydrates, so I usually recommend patients stay with a dry white wine or a champagne. As far as hard liquor goes, rum, vodka, gin, whiskey, those actually don't have any countable carbohydrates, and to have one or two drinks a week is perfectly acceptable. Obviously, you want to stay away from, pina coladas and, the sweet drinks. So pop and those kinds of things, sodas, diet pops, a little hesitant just because pop in general is really not that good for you. It actually at least leaches the calcium out of your bones over time if you drink too much soda. But as far as drinking water and tea and coffee, perfectly acceptable. As far as sweeteners go, I always like to stay with the natural sweeteners, which would be stevia, truvia, those type of sweetener, and really not stay away from like the Splenda type sweeteners if you can, and just because your body is a little more apt to utilize the more natural sweeteners in a positive way rather than a negative way. But the ketogenic diet is extremely a sustainable diet, and the main reason behind that is people are satiated on a ketogenic diet. Fat is satiating. It fills you up. Carbohydrates actually stimulate a certain center of the brain that actually makes you hungrier. And so patients that, make that switch to a pure ketogenic diet, one of the first things they'll tell me, usually within a few weeks of starting the diet, is I'm not hungry. I don't live from one meal to another like I used to on some of the other diet programs I was on. I don't feel like I'm not getting, or that somehow I'm lacking something, because I have no interest in food. I eat until I'm satisfied, and then I stop. People also aren't eating out of boredom anymore. They really are beginning to eat only when they're hungry and stopping when they're full. And that doesn't mean overly full, just really losing an interest in food. So the ketogenic lifestyle actually is very freeing. It is wonderful not to be thinking about my next meal every moment of the day. I eat breakfast, and while I'm eating breakfast, I'm planning what I'm going to have for lunch. And while I'm eating lunch, I'm already thinking about 3 or 4 o'clock, maybe I should have a snack. And my whole psyche as far as food went was pretty much worked around my meal times. Same thing's happening with my family. When I serve them a ketogenic meal, they don't eat as much, and usually not interested in having a dessert. And speaking of desserts, There are desserts on the ketogenic diet. Like I said, I have a fantastic recipe for these little mini donuts I make with a mini donut maker that you can purchase online. Awesome appliance. I also make my own ketogenic ice cream, and it is extremely filling. Usually if I have 1 cup or 1 small scoop, I am done. I don't want any more. Before, when I would have ice cream or something sugary, I would stop at 3 or 4 scoops and put whipping cream and 5 million other things on the top before I felt like I had had enough. Like I said, ketogenic desserts are out there, and they're good, and it's nothing to be worried about. People that are on a ketogenic diet, especially once they become fat adapted, which takes about 6 to 8 weeks, they really do not miss their carbohydrates at all. If you have any other questions, please, you can always contact me at Vital Life Keto. My number is 719-596-4000, or you can go to our website, vitallifeketo.com, and get more information. And thank you for letting me help you start this keto journey.